For centuries, they've told you to fear God. But fear and love cannot live together. A God that demands fear is not divine. He is psychological slavery disguised as faith. The moment you fear God, you lose the capacity to know Him. I am not here to destroy your faith. I am here to purify it. The real God is not a judge sitting above. He is the silence beating within your heart. You can only meet Him when fear disappears, because only love can recognize love. In this message, I will help you see the difference between religion and truth, between belief and experience, between fear and freedom. You will learn why the mind created God in its own image, how priests turned truth into a tool of control, and how to rediscover the divine as a living presence within yourself. This talk will not give you a new belief. It will take away the old ones so that the real can shine through. You were born innocent, pure, curious, alive. But from your first day, the world began to teach you about God. It gave you stories, commandments, promises of heaven, threats of hell, and little by little, those words replaced your wonder. You began to believe instead of knowing. You began to worship instead of experiencing. You began to fear instead of loving. I understand belief feels safe. It gives the illusion of certainty. But truth is not safe. Truth is alive, unpredictable, wild. In this talk, I want to take you beyond the safety of religion into the danger of real God, the one that can only be found when everything you've been told is dropped. And so in this time together, we will explore the real truth about God, not the God of scriptures, not the God of organized religion, but the God that exists before belief. We will look into how religion became a prison for the spirit, how it replaced awareness with obedience, and how to reclaim your direct connection with the divine. I will show you why belief blocks experience, why the mind invents gods to avoid the real one, and how silence, not prayer, opens the door to the sacred. Stay with me till the end, because what I will reveal is not a new doctrine but a mirror in which you will see that the God you have been searching for has never been missing, only you have been absent. Here's something most people completely miss. God was not born in temples. He was born in wonder. Long before religions, before scriptures, before priests and prophets, man looked up at the night sky and trembled in awe. The lightning flashed, the stars moved silently across the heavens, the river flowed with its endless song, and something inside the human heart bowed, not to a person, not to a power, but to the mystery of life itself. That first bow was pure. It was not worship, it was gratitude. There were no words, no images, no prayers. There was only the feeling of being surrounded by something immense, something infinite, something that could never be understood but could be felt in the depth of one's being. Then, slowly, fear entered. Man became frightened of that same mystery he once loved. He began to ask questions. What if this power is angry? What if the thunder is its wrath? What if we must please it to survive? And from that fear, religion was born. The first priests appeared not as seekers of truth, but as interpreters of fear. They said, "Don't worry, we know what this power wants. We can speak to him for you. We can protect you from his anger." And the innocent wonder that once connected man directly to existence was replaced by belief, second-hand, borrowed, stale. Belief is what happens when you stop seeing. When you no longer experience, you start to repeat. The priest said, "Bow in this way, say these words, follow this rule," and man obeyed. He forgot that the divine cannot be borrowed. Truth cannot be inherited. Experience cannot be transferred. The moment you start believing in someone else's experience, you lose your own. It's like holding a photograph of the sun and thinking it will give you warmth. Religion gave man the photograph and man forgot the real sun. You see, belief is safe. Belief is comfortable. It gives you a false sense of knowing. It says, "I don't need to question anymore. I already have the answers." But truth is not safe. Truth is alive. Truth burns everything that is false. That's why religion prefers belief, because belief keeps you asleep. The priest thrives on your sleep. The institution survives only as long as you keep looking outward for what is already within. Here's what religion did. It turned the mystery into a market. It started selling you God the way merchants sell goods. Buy this ritual, repeat this mantra, donate this money, follow this path, and you will be saved. The infinite became a transaction. The sacred became business. The divine, which once belonged to everyone, became the property of a few. They began to own your connection to the eternal. And in doing so, they killed the living God and replaced him with an idol, the God of fear, the God of obedience, the God who punishes and rewards like a tyrant king. Let me tell you a story. Once there was a flame burning brightly in a small village. People would come from far and wide to sit near it, to feel its warmth, to see its light. It gave them joy. It gave them peace. But one day, a clever man came and said, "This flame is dangerous. It can burn. It can destroy. Let me build a lamp around it. Let me protect you." The people agreed, and the man built the lamp safe, enclosed, controlled. Then he said, "You can no longer touch it directly. Bring your offerings to me, and I will keep the flame alive." Over time, generations forgot that there was ever a flame outside the lamp. They began to worship the lamp instead. They polished it, they decorated it, they fought wars over whose lamp was holier, but the flame, the real living flame, was gone. That's exactly what religion has done to God. The flame was life itself. The lamp was the institution. You have been worshipping the lamp while the flame inside has long been extinguished. And this is why humanity feels so spiritually starved, because you've mistaken the container for the content, the symbol for the reality. The moment you name God, you have already lost him. Because the word God is not God. The word is only a finger pointing toward the sky. The tragedy is that people have started worshipping the finger. They argue about whose finger points higher, whose finger points truer, while the sky remains untouched, unseen, unknown, and yet there is hope. Because just as belief can blind you, awareness can awaken you. Once you begin to truly question the false images, something cracks open. You begin to see how the mind has created its own God to feel secure. how fear has disguised itself as faith. When you see this without judgment, without anger, simply as a fact, the illusion begins to lose its power. The walls of belief start to crumble, and through the cracks, light enters again. But the mind, clever as it is, does not give up so easily. When you start seeing through the illusion of belief, it creates another, the illusion of holiness, the illusion of authority, the illusion of divine intermediaries who promise to guide you. This is the next trick in the game, the politics of God. Let us move deeper now into this next layer to see how power disguised itself as piety, how religion became not a path to awakening but a tool of control. What I am about to tell you is something the world has always feared, because if people truly understood it, all temples would crumble overnight, all priests would vanish, and all religions would lose their authority. Here it is. The so-called messengers of God were not the guardians of truth. They were the managers of fear. The priest was never a bridge between man and the divine. He was the wall. And yet, he made you believe that he was the only key holder, that without him you were helpless, that God would not listen unless you spoke his name through the lips of another man. That single lie gave birth to centuries of slavery disguised as faith. Religion, my friends, is not just a spiritual phenomenon. It became a political structure, one of the most refined systems of control ever invented. Once fear entered the human heart, once belief replaced knowing, the mind became fertile ground for manipulation. The priest arrived, holding the promise of salvation in one hand and the threat of damnation in the other. He said, "Obey me and you will reach heaven. Disobey me and you will burn forever." With that promise, he conquered kings. With that threat, he enslaved nations. The body was ruled by politics, but the soul was ruled by religion. And the tragedy is that people call this control faith. Look around you, you will see it everywhere. Churches filled with people bowing not to God, but to an institution. Mosques where the echo of prayer drowns out the silence of understanding. Temples where gold glitters more brightly than awareness. Religion became an empire, and God became its flag. Every prophet that came with light was soon claimed by darkness. Jesus was not crucified by sinners, he was crucified by saints. Buddha was not ignored by ignorance, he was ignored by tradition. And every time a living truth was born, it was immediately turned into a doctrine, caged, catalogued, and sold. The living rivers of consciousness were turned into stagnant ponds of scripture. Do you see the pattern? It's not accidental, it's deliberate. The priest does not want you to know God directly, because direct knowing is dangerous. The moment you experience truth for yourself, you become free from authority, and a free man cannot be controlled, cannot be frightened, cannot be converted. The priest's power depends on your dependence. He must keep you guilty, keep you trembling, keep you small. He says, "You are a sinner. You were born unworthy. Only through me, through my rituals, through my forgiveness, can you be saved." But tell me, who gave him that power? God or fear? The same fire that once gave warmth now burns those who question. The same truth that once liberated is now used to imprison. every time a religion gains power, it begins to police the soul. It tells you what to think, how to love, what to eat, whom to marry, how to die. It creates heaven and hell like borders in the afterlife to govern you even after you're gone. Heaven is the carrot, hell is the stick. And this duality is the perfect machinery of control. You are trapped between hope and fear, between longing for reward and dread of punishment. And while you chase salvation, the priest enjoys his kingdom on earth. You might think this belongs to the past, that humanity has evolved, that we no longer burn witches or silence philosophers. But the same system continues today, only in subtler ways. The modern priest wears a smile instead of robes. But the message is the same. Follow me, believe me, don't question. The labels have changed. Religion, politics, media, ideology, but the structure remains. It still divides. It still manipulates. It still thrives on fear. It doesn't matter whether you kneel before a cross, a flag, or a logo, as long as you kneel. That's all it ever wanted. But the real tragedy is not what they've done, it's what you've forgotten. You have forgotten that God needs no representative, no interpreter, no mediator. You have forgotten that the divine doesn't speak through commandments, it speaks through silence. You don't need a map to reach Him. You only need to stop running in circles drawn by others. God is not a prize to be awarded. He is the ground beneath your feet. The more you chase Him through priests and prayers, the farther you drift from the living truth. When I say that religion became politics, I don't mean just institutions and hierarchies, I mean the subtle politics inside your own mind. Your inner priest tells you what's holy and what's not, what's acceptable and what's sinful. That voice is the internalized authority, the ghost of centuries, whispering, be careful, don't question, don't trust yourself. That is the most dangerous priest of all, the one living inside you. He quotes scripture, he interprets morality, he keeps you divided within. One part of you desires freedom, another part shouts blasphemy. One part wants to love, another wants of sin. You have turned the whole inner sky into a courtroom, and then you wonder why there is no peace. But once you see that this inner priest is an illusion, the chains begin to fall. You start to understand that the true temple is your awareness, that prayer is not repetition but receptivity, that sin is not disobedience but unconsciousness, and slowly the idea of God as a tyrant fades away. A new fragrance enters, the fragrance of freedom. You realize that love needs no commandments, that truth needs no authority. Now the question naturally arises, if fear created false gods and religion turned truth into power, then what will reveal the real God? If belief led us astray, what can lead us home? The answer, my friend, is love, not love as emotion, but love as awareness, as connection, as the very heartbeat of existence. But to reach that love, you must first unlearn the fear. Let us walk together into that next understanding, how fear became the language of faith and how love can make you free. Here is something that has poisoned the soul of humanity more deeply than anything else. The idea that you must fear God to love Him. The very foundation of religion was built not on love, not on freedom, not on awareness, but on fear. And fear, my friend, is the opposite of the divine. A frightened heart can never know God, because fear and love cannot breathe in the same space. Fear closes you, it shrinks you, it makes you small and submissive. It forces you to obey, but it kills your capacity to trust. Fear can make you a believer, but it will never make you awake. It can make you kneel, but it will never make you open. The priests knew this. They built their kingdoms upon it. They told you God is watching. They told you He keeps a record of every thought, every desire, every sin. They told you He rewards and punishes, that He decides who burns and who ascends, who is worthy and who is damned. And in doing so, they replaced God with a policeman, an eternal authority sitting in the sky, judging, condemning, threatening. And the child that lives within you, innocent and afraid, began to tremble. Out of that trembling, you began to pray, not out of love, not out of gratitude, but out of terror. You began to worship your jailer and call it devotion. This fear-based religion thrives on guilt. Guilt is its language, its currency, its control. The priest whispers, "You are born sinful, you are broken, you are unworthy." And once you accept that lie, you become dependent on him to save you. Guilt makes you beg for forgiveness for simply being human, for loving, for feeling, for desiring, for living. They have convinced you that your very existence is a mistake that must be corrected through obedience. And so you bow, you confess, you surrender not to the divine, but to those who claim to represent it. Do you see the cunning beauty of this trap? Fear keeps you obedient. Guilt keeps you loyal. Together, they build a prison you mistake for paradise. And inside that prison, you follow the rules. You perform the rituals. You say the words you were told to say. But your heart remains empty. You pray, but there is no joy. You sing hymns, but there is no life in your song. You talk of heaven, but you live in constant anxiety. How can you love a God you are terrified of? How can you feel intimate with something that makes you feel small and ashamed? Let me tell you a truth that religion will never dare to speak. The God that can be feared is not God. He is an invention of frightened men. The real God does not need your worship. He needs your awareness. He does not punish. He reflects. Whatever you give, you receive, not because He judges, but because existence is a mirror. You throw anger into it, it echoes anger back. You pour love into it, it radiates love back. That is the law of life, not of punishment, but of balance. You are not being watched from above, you are being lived from within. The priest says, "Fear God," and I say, fear destroys God. Fear builds temples, but it cannot build awareness. Fear kneels, but it cannot bow in love. Fear prays, but it never listens. It talks endlessly, but it never hears the silence. That is the real language of the divine. Love, on the other hand, listens. Love trusts. Love surrenders, not because it is commanded to, but because it overflows naturally. When you love, there is no need for commandments. Love is its own discipline. Have you ever seen how a child looks at the world before he is taught what to believe? His eyes are full of wonder, not fear. His heart is open, not cautious. That's why Jesus said, unless you become like a child, you will not enter the kingdom of God. But the priest turned even that into dogma. They said, become like a child by obeying us. And so, the innocence that was supposed to be rediscovered became another rule to follow. The child within you was lost, buried under commandments, under guilt, under fear of punishment. Fear makes you moral, but not conscious. It makes you follow the rules, but not out of understanding. You become good not because you are aware, but because you are afraid of the consequences. That's not goodness, that's cowardice. The truly good person is not one who avoids sin. It is one who has seen the futility of sin and therefore transcends it. Awareness, not fear, is the foundation of true morality. A fearful man avoids doing wrong only because he is afraid of getting caught. An aware man does right because he cannot do otherwise. And guilt, what a cruel invention it is. When a flower blooms, it does not feel guilty for being beautiful. When a river flows, it does not apologize for its sound. When the wind moves through the trees, it does not feel ashamed of its freedom. But you have been taught to feel guilty for every joy, for every desire, for every act of being alive. You've been told that to be spiritual is to be against yourself. That is not spirituality, that is self-violence. The divine does not demand suppression, it invites expression. It does not condemn desire. It asks you to understand it. Because in understanding, desire transforms into love, and love becomes prayer. If you can understand this, even for a moment, you will feel a great weight lift from your heart. You'll realize you have nothing to confess, nothing to be forgiven for, because you were never guilty. You were simply unaware. And unawareness is not a sin, it's a sleep. You don't punish a sleeping man, you wake him up. That's what I'm doing, not preaching, but awakening. So let this be your meditation tonight. Stop fearing, stop asking for forgiveness, stop apologizing for your existence. The moment you do, you'll feel something shift inside you, a gentleness, a warmth, a quiet love. That is not coming from outside, it is coming from your own heart. That's the real temple. That's the real prayer. And when love enters, fear disappears. When love blossoms, guilt fades. And in that silence where fear once lived, you begin to feel something sacred, stirring the presence of God, not as an idea, but as an experience. Now the question arises, if fear is the root of false religion, and love is the doorway to the real, what does that love look like when it flowers? What happens when the heart becomes the temple and life itself becomes prayer? Let's enter that space next and see how love reveals the God that religion hid. When fear disappears, when guilt falls away like old skin, what begins to arise in its place is something so vast, so tender, that words tremble to describe it. It is love, not the love that comes and goes, not the love that clings or demands, but the love that simply is. This love has no object. It is not directed towards someone or something. It is not a relationship. It is a state of being. When your heart is no longer divided by belief and fear, love flows as naturally as breathing. And in that flow, you begin to glimpse what religion tried to describe but never knew: the living God. Not a deity carved in stone or painted in imagination, but the pulse of existence itself, the silent intelligence that breathes through all things. The real God is not hidden in heaven. He is hidden in this very moment. He is not waiting for you in the afterlife. He is waiting for you here, in the rhythm of your breath, in the space between two thoughts, in the beauty of a leaf trembling under sunlight. But you miss him because your mind is too busy looking for an image that fits your idea of God. You are searching for something extraordinary, something majestic, while God hides in the ordinary. In the smallest things, in a child's laughter, in the scent of rain, in the quiet between heartbeats. Love is the only key that opens that door, because love makes you simple, and only simplicity can see the sacred. The mind complicates everything. It says, prove God, describe Him, define Him, locate Him. But God cannot be defined, because whatever can be defined becomes limited, and the divine is infinite. God cannot be proven, because proof belongs to logic and God belongs to experience. You cannot understand God with thought. You can only dissolve into Him through love. Love doesn't analyze, it absorbs. It doesn't ask questions, it becomes the answer. When you love deeply, when you love totally, you begin to lose the boundaries of the self. You forget where you end and where the other begins. That disappearance of separation, that melting, is the first taste of God. Religion hides this truth because love makes you ungovernable. A loving person cannot be controlled. You can command obedience through fear, but you cannot command love. Love doesn't follow laws. It creates its own law, a law of freedom, of trust, of unity. That's why every religion fears love. They talk about love endlessly, but they never allow it to flower. Because when love flowers, the temple becomes irrelevant, the priest becomes useless, the scripture becomes obsolete. Love makes every moment sacred, every heart a sanctuary. And then, who needs a middleman between you and God? Love is the direct connection, the wireless link between existence and awareness. You see, love dissolves separation, while belief strengthens it. The believer says, I am here, God is there. I am small, He is great. I am unworthy, He is perfect. But love says, there is no two, there is no I and thou. There is only one. When the lover disappears, only love remains, and that love is God. You don't find Him, you vanish into Him. The river doesn't reach the ocean as an individual. It disappears into its vastness, and in that disappearance, it becomes the ocean. In the same way, when you love totally, you become divine. Let me tell you something that will sound like a paradox. The more you seek God, the more distant He becomes. But when you stop seeking, when you fall in love with life as it is, not as you wish it to be, He appears. He appears not as a person standing before you, but as an awareness blooming inside you. you start to feel a quiet presence, not separate from you, but deeper than you, something watching, listening, breathing. It is not yours, it is universal. It belongs to everyone and to no one. That is the living God. Religion has hidden this living God behind concepts and commandments. They said, love your God, but they never told you how. They said, worship Him, but they never told you where to find Him. They taught you words empty, lifeless words, while the real God was waiting in silence. They filled your mind with theology, but they never taught you how to be still. And yet, silence is the only temple where God can be felt. The mind is too noisy for the divine to enter. You can call His name 1,000 times, but He won't come, not because He refuses, but because He is already here, and you are too busy talking to notice. When love comes, the talking stops. You don't need to say anything. You don't need to believe anything. You simply feel a deep sense of belonging, as if you are home for the first time. The world remains the same, yet everything glows differently. The trees, the people, the stars, all seem alive, aware, connected. You realize that nothing is separate, that existence is a single organism breathing together, and in that realization, the idea of God disappears, because what you were calling God was just a name for this wholeness. Love is not an act of devotion, it's an act of seeing. When you love, you see clearly for the first time. The dust of fear and belief falls from your eyes, and reality shines in its original beauty. You begin to live not as a follower, but as a participant in creation itself. Every gesture becomes sacred, a smile, a word, a tear, a silence. This is prayer, not the kind that begs or asks, but the kind that celebrates. Once someone asked me, Osho, where is God? And I said, everywhere except in your mind, because the mind is too full of ideas about God to leave room for Him. You cannot think your way to God. You can only feel your way to Him. And feeling requires vulnerability, softness, surrender, the very qualities that religion has condemned. They told you to be righteous, not receptive, to be moral, not alive, to be obedient, not aware, and that's why you have missed the divine. But love, real love, undoes all that conditioning. It cracks the walls you built around your heart. It makes you defenseless before existence. And in that defenselessness, you are no longer a believer or a skeptic, you are a lover. And the lover does not ask, does God exist? The lover says, how could He not? So when love enters, religion ends. When love blooms, belief becomes unnecessary. You stop searching for God because you begin to see Him in everything, and that seeing changes everything. You no longer live for heaven, you live from heaven. You no longer chase eternity, you realize you are it. But there is still one more illusion that stands between you and total freedom. Even as love awakens and the living God shines through you, the mind still clings to its last trick, the belief that God is separate from you, that He is someone to experience. That subtle duality keeps you from total union. So let us go even deeper into the heart of this mystery and see how to end the final search, how to discover that the God you long for is not beyond you, but within you as your very self. The greatest illusion the human mind has ever created is the idea that God is somewhere else. For centuries, you've been told to look upward, to pray outward, to seek beyond, and because of that, you have been walking in circles, missing what has been pulsing quietly within you all along. God is not in the sky. God is not in the temple. God is not even in the word God. He is the consciousness that looks through your eyes, the silence that listens behind your thoughts, the stillness that watches your mind move. You are not separate from Him. You have never been. The seeker and the sought have always been one. But because your attention was turned outward, you forgot the treasure buried in your own heart. You became a beggar standing at the door of your own house. This idea of a distant God, of an almighty being outside yourself, is perhaps the most dangerous idea ever conceived. Because the moment you believe God is somewhere else, you also believe you are without Him. The moment you imagine Him as other, you create an infinite distance that can never truly be crossed. The priests saw this and took advantage. They said, "We will build the bridge. We will connect you to Him." And so you spent your life walking their bridges, bridges made of words, of doctrines, of rules, but every step only led you further from home. How can you reach what you already are? How can you find what was never lost? The divine is not an object to be discovered, it is the subject that experiences. It cannot be seen as something apart because it is the very seeing itself. It cannot be known as something outside because it is the knowing. When you say, "I am aware," that awareness is the presence of God. When you breathe, that breath is His rhythm moving through you. When you look into another's eyes and feel something alive that words cannot capture, that is God recognizing Himself. But because you've been conditioned to believe in distance, you overlook the nearness, the infinite nearness. You've been taught to close your eyes in prayer, not realizing that you were closing your eyes to the only temple that has ever existed, the living temple of consciousness itself. And yet, even when I say God is within you, I must also warn you, do not turn this into another belief. Because then it becomes just another idea, another concept to cling to. I am not asking you to believe that God is within. I am asking you to look, to see, to feel. Belief still belongs to the mind. It is second hand. Seeing belongs to awareness. It is immediate. It is alive. When you truly look inward, when you stop searching and simply witness what is, something extraordinary begins to unfold. You start to feel a subtle vibration like the faint hum beneath all existence. It's not emotional, it's not intellectual, it's existential. It's the same energy that makes flowers bloom, that turns seeds into trees, that spins galaxies in the void. That energy is God, not as a person, but as presence. Prayer then takes on a completely new meaning. It is no longer a dialogue between you and some imagined deity. It becomes a state of listening. You stop talking, you stop asking, you stop begging, and instead you listen. You listen to the silence inside, and in that silence, you hear the voice of existence, wordless, formless, infinite. True prayer is meditation. It is not communication. It is communion. It is not reaching out. It is sinking in. You do not rise toward heaven. You fall into yourself. And in that falling, you realize there was never anywhere to rise to. Imagine a drop of water searching for the ocean. It travels across rivers, clouds, and storms, endlessly longing to merge with something vast. But the truth is, it has always been water. The ocean was never apart from it. The drop was simply unaware of its own nature. You are that drop, and your search, your restless pilgrimage through religions, philosophies, and ideologies is nothing but a dream. The moment you wake up and realize that the seeker was the sought, the journey ends. That ending is the beginning of true peace. This realization is not philosophical. It's deeply experiential. When you become still enough, you start to feel the pulse of God in everything, not as an object of worship, but as life itself. You see the divine not only in meditation, but in movement, in laughter, in tears, in the most mundane moments. Washing your hands becomes prayer. Walking becomes worship. Silence becomes song. Life becomes a constant unfolding of divinity. And then you understand why the mystics said, wherever you look, there is the face of God. They were not speaking metaphorically, they were speaking literally. Once your eyes are clear, you see that existence itself is sacred. And it is here that the last illusion begins to crumble. The mind will still whisper, yes, God is within me, but I am still separate from Him. There is God and there is me. But even this subtle duality is false. There is no me apart from the divine. The wave may rise and fall, but it was never separate from the ocean. You don't contain God, you are contained within Him. Or perhaps it's truer to say, there is no you and no Him, there is only being. When this is seen, the need for religion evaporates completely. The seeker dissolves. The prayer dissolves. Even the idea of God dissolves, because now there is no one left to call it by any name. There is only an endless, silent awareness, vast, boundless, eternal. That is the real divinity beyond all forms and words. But before we reach that final silence, before we step into that nameless vastness, we must let go even of this last concept, the concept of God. Because as long as the word remains, the separation remains. The next step, therefore, is the ultimate step to go beyond God Himself. To see what remains when even the divine dissolves into pure existence, where not only religion disappears, but the very need for the word God vanishes like mist in morning light. There comes a moment on every true path of awakening when even the idea of God must die. This moment is the most sacred, the most terrifying, the most liberating, because until then, you have still been holding on to an image, a concept, a name. Maybe your God was infinite light. Maybe your God was deep silence. Maybe your God was love itself, but still It was an image. And every image is a subtle boundary. The human mind, no matter how vast, cannot hold the infinite without trying to define it. And every definition becomes a prison, even the most beautiful one. Sooner or later, the flame of truth will ask you to throw away every lamp, even the ones that once guided you through darkness. You must be willing to walk without a torch, without a scripture, without a belief, to walk into the vast unknown where there is no God to find and no you to do the finding. This is what the mystics call the great death, not the death of the body, but the death of separation, the death of identity, the death of all concepts that once gave you comfort. At first, it feels like loss. The mind trembles because it was built upon opposites, me and you, heaven and earth, God and creation. When all opposites vanish, the mind has nothing to hold on to. It feels like falling into a void, but that void is not emptiness. It is fullness without borders. It is the source of everything, the silent womb from which all existence is born. To the fearful, it looks like nothingness. To the awakened, it is absolute completeness. Let me tell you the story of the salt doll. One day, a doll made entirely of salt walked to the edge of the ocean. It had traveled far through deserts and storms, searching for truth. It had heard rumors that the ocean was vast, infinite, divine. "Who are you?" asked the doll as it stepped into the water. And the ocean laughed softly and said, "Come closer and see." The doll walked deeper, and as it did, it began to dissolve. Frightened, it said, "What is happening to me?" And the ocean whispered, "To know me, you must lose yourself. There is no other way." The doll went further still, until nothing of it remained. And in that final instant, it cried out with joy, "Now I know who I am." That cry, that silence, that disappearance is enlightenment. That is the moment when God and the seeker both dissolve, and only being remains. When I say beyond God, I am not denying the divine. I am denying the duality that creates the idea of divinity. Because to say God is to say not God. The word itself divides existence into sacred and profane, divine and mundane, spiritual and worldly. But when you truly awaken, you see that there is no division. The same life that moves in the saint moves in the sinner. The same consciousness that breathes in the tree breathes in the stone. Nothing is excluded, nothing is outside. The whole cosmos is one seamless dance, moving without purpose, without end. In that seeing, the need for God disappears, because existence itself is enough. Religion taught you that God is the creator, but creation is not separate from the creator. The dancer and the dance are one movement. To think of them as two is to miss the beauty of what is. The moment you see that everything is happening by itself, that life is its own source, its own song, its own silence, you laugh. You laugh because you realize the absurdity of all your efforts to reach what could never be left behind. You laugh because even when you were lost in God. Even your ignorance was part of His knowing. Even your blindness was His play. And in that laughter, something magnificent happens. The last shadow of I disappears. Until now, there was still someone witnessing, someone meditating, someone loving, but in this final dissolution, even the witness dissolves. There is no longer an observer of truth, there is only truth. There is no longer awareness of existence, there is only existence. The river has merged completely with the ocean, the sound has vanished into silence. And that silence is not absence, it is the presence that contains all. This is the end of all paths, and yet it is the beginning of life as it truly is. Because when you disappear, what remains is not death, but pure living. The body moves, but there is no doer. Words come, but there is no speaker. Thoughts may rise and fall, but they leave no trace. Everything happens spontaneously, effortlessly, beautifully, like wind moving through leaves, like light playing upon water. The ego is gone, but life continues more alive than ever, more radiant, more vast. You don't live anymore. Life lives through you. That's why I say the ultimate prayer is silence. Not silence as in the absence of sound, but silence as in the absence of self. It's not something you can practice. It's something that happens when all practice ends. The true prayer is not asking, not praising, not confessing. It is dissolving. It is becoming so empty that existence can sing through you. It is the moment when you and God are no longer two notes, you become the same melody. And when that happens, every breath is worship, every heartbeat is a hymn, every moment is divine. And then you understand the real truth about God was never hidden. It was never in the scriptures, never in the temples, never in the heavens. It was here, in this very breath, in this vast silence that you had always been. God did not disappear, you did. You disappeared into what you truly are, the boundless, the nameless, the eternal. And so the circle completes itself. You started by believing in God, then you sought God, then you found that God was within you, and now even that within dissolves, because there is no inside, no outside, no beginning, no end. There is only this unbroken, uncreated, undying existence. The mystics called it suchness, the Buddhists called it nirvana, the Sufis called it the beloved, and the sages of India simply called it that. But names don't matter anymore. What matters is that the search is over. The seeker has vanished. And what remains is peace so vast, so total, that even calling it peace would be too small. Now, let us rest here for a moment, not in thought, not in words, but in the quiet awareness that has always been. The game of religion is over. The struggle to reach is over. There is no heaven to go to, no truth to find, no God to worship. There is only this eternal silence, breathing, moving, dancing, without reason, without direction, without end. And in that silence, if you listen closely, you will hear a whisper, not from me, not from God, but from the stillness itself. Welcome home.